Welcome to all our viewers in India and around the world. You are watching Defense Dynamics and I am Danveer Singh coming to you from New Delhi. On Defense Dynamics today, we talk about three major stories, one each from the Air Force, Navy and the Army. In the air, it's India's big air superiority push, and that's the 114 fighter moment. What that means, we'll tell you. And at sea, India's Navy is in ASEAN, a quiet power with clear intent. India's most consistent strategic gains are unfolding in the Far East. And on the land, the Indian Army rewrites procurement from startups to the battlefield with its latest induction under iDEX, marking a structural shift in how India plans to equip its forces of the future. Finally, in my take, we talk about India's defense budget. The shift is real, more needs to be done, but first, the global defense headlines.
India and the United Arab Emirates on Monday signed a letter of intent for bilateral strategic defense partnership. Both sides agreed to continue cooperation within the framework of the Financial Action Task Force or FATF to counter terror financing and strengthen anti-money laundering efforts. India's Chief of Naval Staff, Admiral Dinesh K. Tripathi, visited the National Cadet Corps or NCC Republic Day Camp 2026 at Delhi Cantonment on Monday. He interacted with cadets and lauded their discipline, commitment and service to the nation. France has ordered 7,000 PT-6T Zetros 6-ton 6x6 logistic trucks from Arcus and Daimler Truck. The vehicles will be produced and delivered over a 10-year period. United Kingdom's Leonardo helicopter has successfully completed a first flight of a rotary wing uncrewed air system developed under the Royal Navy's Protest Technology Demonstrator program. The aircraft was designed and manufactured at Yeovil. Italian submarine maker M23 unveiled two operational mini submarine variants at Dimex 2026 in Doha. Both 22-meter C-Series and 10.5-meter T-Series mini submarines are designed for special operations and intelligence, surveillance and reconnaissance missions.
India is standing at a critical air power crossroads. With fighter squadrons shrinking and regional threats expanding, New Delhi is preparing a decision that will shape the Indian Air Force for the next 2 decades. The 114 multi-role fighter program is not just a purchase, it's a strategic reset.
The Indian Air Force today operates at barely 30 to 31 fighter squadrons against a sanctioned strength of 42. MiG-21s have retired, Jaguar strike aircrafts are aging, and while new platforms are coming in, the pace of induction has not matched the pace of retirement. This numerical gap is no longer theoretical. It directly impacts India's ability to sustain a two-front contingency. So why this deal matters? The 114 fighter program is designed to arrest this decline decisively. Unlike piecemeal inductions, this is a fleet-level solution capable of restoring squadron strength, ensuring operational continuity, and giving commanders flexibility across theaters. Aircrafts under consideration offer advanced sensors, network-centric warfare capability, deep strike reach, and survivability against modern air defenses. In short, this is about quality compensating for quantity. So what is the strategic messaging? This move sends 3 clear messages. To Pakistan, the air power balance will not tilt westwards. To China, India is serious about contesting the air domain over the Himalayas and Indian Ocean. And to the global partners, India is a long-term high-value defense market, but on its own terms. It is also a Make in India reality check. Crucially, the program insists on domestic manufacturing. This is not symbolism. It's about wartime resilience, ensuring that spare parts, upgrades, and maintenance are not hostage to geopolitics. But it also raises hard questions. Can India's industrial ecosystem deliver on timelines? Can technology transfer be meaningful, not cosmetic?
India's industrial ecosystem is increasingly demonstrating its ability to deliver on timelines with genuine, not cosmetic technology transfer. A key example is Solar Defence and Aerospace Limited in Nagpur, where a fully automated facility manufactures 30 mm ammunition for the Army and the Navy. And the guided Pinaka rockets have been flagged off for export to Armenia, strengthening India's defence export potential. Indigenous systems such as the multi-mode hand grenade, Nagastra loitering munitions successfully used during Operation Sindoor and the Bhargava Astra counter-drone system highlights robust private sector research and development capabilities. Together, these developments reinforce public-private defence manufacturing model with the government targeting private sector participation of 50% or more.
So this isn't about which fighter wins the contract, it's about whether India can finally align operational urgency with industrial ambition. The decision will define not just the Indian Air Force's combat edge, but India's credibility as defense power in transition. In today's Indo-Pacific, power projection is no longer just about aircraft carriers or missile ranges. It's about presence, trust, and staying power. And that is exactly what the Indian Navy is demonstrating through its first training squadrons deployment to Southeast Asia.
The deployment is beyond the headlines. The Indian Navy's first training squadron has sailed into ASEAN waters as part of its long-range Indian Ocean region deployment. On the surface, it's a training mission for young officers. Strategically, it is a carefully structured outreach combining seamanship training, joint drills, professional exchanges, and port diplomacy. These visits are not one-off gestures. They are repeat engagements designed to build familiarity and trust over time. So why ASEAN is central to India's strategy? ASEAN sits astride some of the world's most critical sea lanes, through which nearly a third of global trade passes. At the same time, the region is under growing pressure from China's expanding naval and coast guard presence in the South China Sea. Many ASEAN nations are being forced to choose sides. India offers a third option: the security partner that does not demand alignment, does not militarize disputes, and does not export instability. So what's the China comparison? China's maritime strategy relies on scale, coercion, and permanence. Artificial islands, forward bases, and constant patrols. India's model is fundamentally different. No permanent bases, no gunboat diplomacy, no political strings attached. Instead, India focuses on interoperability, capacity building, and crisis cooperation, especially in humanitarian assistance, disaster relief, and maritime domain awareness.
India is steadily expanding its defense footprint in Southeast Asia, supplying military equipments to key ASEAN partners including the Philippines, Vietnam, Indonesia, Malaysia, and Thailand, while also being close to securing major BrahMos missile export orders. The Indian Navy maintains strong training collaboration with the navies of Singapore, Vietnam, Indonesia, and Philippines, Malaysia, and Thailand through training maintenance support and its first training squadron. Multilateral engagement has also deepened through the ASEAN and the India Maritime exercise involving navies from Brunei, Indonesia, Malaysia, and Philippines, Singapore, Thailand, Vietnam. These ties are also set to strengthen further during the 2026 designated year as ASEAN India Year of Maritime Cooperation, focusing on maritime security and the blue economy.
So how can training work as a force multiplier? Well, training deployments may look symbolic, but they deliver real operational dividends. The officers who train together today coordinate better tomorrow. Navies that share procedures respond faster in crisis. The trust built in peacetime often determines cooperation during conflict. This is slow power, but a durable power. So therefore, India is a net security provider. For New Delhi, this aligns with long-standing objective, positioning India as a net security provider in the Indian Ocean and beyond. From anti-piracy patrols to evacuation missions, the Indian Navy has repeatedly demonstrated reliability. ASEAN outreach strengthens this perception, quietly expanding India's strategic depth eastwards.
India's maritime strategy isn't about outgunning rivals, it's about outlasting them. In an Indo-Pacific crowded by aggressive posturing, India is building influence the hardest way, that is through consistency, credibility and restraint. And that may prove far more powerful than the presence alone. For decades, the Indian Army has fought with courage and often with tools designed elsewhere, delayed by procedure and outdated by the time they arrived. That is now changing, quietly, structurally, and perhaps irreversibly. Through indigenous innovation and new procurement mindset, the Indian Army is rewriting how wars will be fought and how India will fight them.
So what's the fundamental problem? India's biggest military disadvantage was never manpower. It was time. Traditional defense procurement took years, sometimes even decades. By the time equipment entered service, threats had evolved, technology had moved on, adversaries had adapted. This created a dangerous lag between battlefield reality and military capability. In modern warfare, that lag can be fatal. So why future wars demand a different army? Today's battlefield is no longer linear. It is drone-saturated, sensor-heavy, algorithm-driven, data-dominated. From Ukraine to Middle East, wars are being shaped by cheap drones, overwhelming expensive systems, AI-enabled targeting, electronic warfare disrupting command chains, logistics becoming a prime target. As army designed for 20th century warfare cannot dominate a 21st century battlefield. So enter iDEX, it's a structural break. This is where innovations of defense excellence or iDEX becomes transformational. Instead of asking, what weapons do we want to buy? Army now asks, what problems do we need to solve? Surveillance gaps, counter drone defense, mountain logistics, secure communications, decision making under information overload. The innovators have been given real military problems, not paper requirements. From labs to live units, what makes this shift radical in speed? Under iDEX, prototypes are tested with frontline units, soldiers provide real-time feedback, systems are modified rapidly, successful technology moves straight to induction. This collapses the gap between, that is, idea, trial, and battlefield usage. For the first time, Indian soldiers are shaping the tools they fight with. The two-front reality. India is the only major army preparing for a sustained operations against two nuclear-armed adversaries. That reality changes everything. Imported systems come with supply chain vulnerabilities, political leverage, wartime uncertainty. Indigenous systems mean guaranteed availability, faster upgrades, freedom to fight without permission. In a long war, self-reliance is combat power. Doctrinal shift from mass to mind. This innovation push is also changing doctrine. The Indian Army is moving from mass formation to network, agile, tech-enabled units. Decision making is decentralizing. Situational awareness is expanding downwards. Technology is becoming a thinking partner, not just a tool. This is how modern armies stay ahead of numerically comparable foes. Exports, ethics and responsibility. As indigenous capability grows, India's defense exports are rising. But unlike many arms exporters, New Delhi is pairing innovation with tight strategic trade controls. This ensures sensitive technology doesn't leak. India remains a trusted supplier. Defense exports strengthen diplomacy, not destabilize regions. This is how serious military powers behave.
Launched in 2018, the iDEX initiative is reshaping how the Indian Army solves battlefield challenges by directly linking soldiers with the innovators and the startup. Instead of slow traditional procurement, iDEX enables rapid development, testing and induction of technologies through real-time military feedback. Backed by government funding of nearly 500 crore rupees, the program supports startup, MSME and individual innovators working on next-gen defense and aerospace solutions.
For the first time, India is aligning policy, industry, soldiers and strategy in the same direction. The Indian Army's transformation is not being driven by one weapon or one reform. It is being driven by a simple realization. Future wars will not wait for slow systems or slow thinking. By turning startups into force multipliers, the soldiers into innovators, India is finally shortening the distance between ideas and the impact. And in modern warfare, that distance can decide victory. For years, India's defense budgeting was about crisis management. Squadron shortages, ammunition gaps, emergency imports after every standoff. The result, India spent money but without building long-term military advantage. That phase is changing. India's defense budget is now rupees 6.8 lakh crores. The capital outlay stands at 1.72 lakh crore rupees. Over 75% of capital procurement is earmarked by domestic industry allotment. This is no longer survival spending. This is force structuring. But there's the gap. No headlines mentioned. And that is, India spends just 5.5 to 6% of its defense budget on research and development. And that is roughly 0.6 to 0.7% of the GDP. Now compare this with that of United States, who spends 10 to 15% of defense budget on their R&D. Chinese, on the other side, are spending up to 10% of their budget on the R&D, tightly focused on AI, space and hypersonics. This matters because future wars won't be decided by platforms alone. They'll be decided by software, sensors and decision speed. Indigenization is often sold as self-reliance. In reality, it is about wartime freedom, no spare part choke points, no export controls during conflict, no political pressures when operations begin. Recent global wars have shown one truth very clearly. Countries that depend on imports fight with constraints. Countries that build at home fight on their own terms. There's also a bigger payoff. India's defense exports have crossed rupees 21,000 crores, up from just 1,500 crore a decade ago. This isn't just revenue, it's influence. Nations that procure defense technology shape rules. Nations that import it follow them. Here's the risk ahead. If research and development spending doesn't rise sharply, if private innovation slows, if reforms lose urgency, India could end up with a strong military for today, but underprepared for 2035. And in modern warfare, 5-year technology gap is absolutely decisive. India has crossed an important threshold. The defense budget is no longer about managing decline, it's about shaping power. But transformation demands consistency, year after year, budget after budget, because Tomorrow's wars won't reward who spends more. They'll reward who innovates faster and adapts first. That's all for this week on Defense Dynamics. Share your comments on social media with hashtag #DDWithDanveer. See you next week with new defense and geopolitical developments with their analysis. Until then, goodbye and take care.